And we're live, I believe. Hey, how's everybody doing? Dan Shinder here with Dr. Nadia Azar. I thought you were going to say it. And
You know what? I had your picture of this on the Zoom covered because I was trying to log in to see the live to get
oh,
the
that's
comments,
so
and so I
fun.
didn't see. That's what I was like.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was pointing. So
Sorry.
welcome, folks. I'm always excited to do this show with Dr. Nadia because this is important. Even if you're not a drummer, even if you're a bass player, guitar player, saxophone player, a musician who works with your hands, we'll talk about that in a minute. This is important. And even if you're not a musician, you're a music fan, but you work with your hands, we talk about different types of repetitive motion injuries. And drummers can acquire these a lot. And this is brought to you by the MetaFlex Therapy Glove. It's compression, helps with circulation. It's been shown to improve help with symptoms of arthritis, carpal tunnel, tendinitis. Has a little tension strap so you can build strength. It's a strengthening glove as well. You could, if you're the type of drummer, that sounds funny. If you're the type of drummer that likes to play with gloves on, this is really cool. And lately, the last couple days, I've actually had a little funk going on with my hands, Nadia, because it was 70 degrees. You've been here up in the mountains. 70 degrees on Sunday, and last night we had a snowstorm. So it got really cold the last couple of days, and that drastic change in temperature, I was really feeling it in both my hands. And they make right-handed gloves too, not just the left one, folks. So the link is in the post. Get yours now. I promise you, they help. They absolutely help. But here's something else I want to mention just real quickly. I'm going to pull up a graphic because here's something to watch for. This is a great reason to sign up for our email list because pretty soon we're releasing our Drum Talk TV Brilliance membership site that's not just only going to have drumming education, but how to mic drums, track drums, mix drums, master drums. Same thing with other musical instruments. We're going to have streamed concerts, clinics, roundtable discussions with your favorite drummers, games, a game show for members only. It's going to be epic, and we're building it right now. So get in early by signing up for our newsletter, our email list. I'm going to be sending out something soon that'll show you how you can get in as an early adopter at a very, 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 very ridiculous, Dan's lost his fucking mind discount for life. It's going to be awesome. And it coincides with a 10-year anniversary show I was just telling Nadia about, May 20th in Las Vegas. And we're going to have some very special guests there. So get in on it, get in on it. So, folks, chime in, tell us where you're watching from. Nadia's in Windsor, Canada. I'm in Globe, Arizona, 100 miles east of Phoenix, up in elevation a little bit away from the city. And I'm going to pull the show up here so you all can tell us, A, where you're watching from, and B, do you have tendinitis? Do you have carpal tunnel? Do you have bursitis? You have issues with your joints or your nerves, your neck, your arches, your sciatica, your butt, your ankle, your knees? Because, you know, your hip bone's connected to your drumming bones somehow through all of that. And we want to know if you have symptoms. Dr. Nadia can give you some tips on how you might need to just change your setup a little bit. Right, Nadia?
Yeah, could be change of setup. Could be that you need to incorporate more breaks and longer breaks potentially. There's all kinds of little things you can do that might be able to help with these things.
Yeah, and some people are avid followers of our show. So, folks, you're going to hear us repeat some things because it's great general info. So consider it a loving reminder. And I'd like to start with stretching because some people don't know the difference between static and dynamic stretching. And if they do, they don't always know when to do which one. You got to do only one type when you're warming up, the other when you're cooling down. Can you set everybody straight with that so they don't hurt themselves trying to take care of themselves?
Yeah, so absolutely, we can talk about that. And I will just say that it's there's an optimal time to do each of these stretches when that goes along with recommendations for best practice. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to hurt yourself if you don't quite do it this way, or that you're not going to hurt yourself if you do. Right. Just that caveat. But in general, the principle is that when you are warming up, the whole purpose of a warm-up is to prepare your body to move. And you want to prepare your body by building up for the movement that you're going to be doing with movements that are going to mimic that. So if you're going to be playing the drums, that's a very dynamic, lots of motion, lots of big joint motions, large gestures. So you want to warm up your joints to be able to do that. So doing something like, a stretch and hold, you're not preparing that joint to move.
For movement.
You're
that
just
makes sense.
For
That's
movement.
a great way to remember
Exactly.
which goes when.
That's right. Exactly. So everything you do to warm up is preparing your body to move. So that means doing, 60 seconds or so, even of like jogging on the spot, get your heart pumping, get the blood flowing through your body, and then go into some dynamic stretches, which are the stretches while you're moving. So things like the arm circles, the wrist circles, the elbow, forearm pivoting like that, trunk twisting, ankle rotations, even that sort of thing. All the things that are basically moving your joints through their range of motion, that helps to start to loosen up the ligaments. It also warms up the muscles because your body moves through muscle contraction. So you're warming up the muscles, and you're lubricating the joints also through movement. So the dynamic movement or dynamic stretching happens before you play. After you play, when you're now trying to bring everything back into its baseline state, you're trying to cool down, relax, calm, that's a good time to do the static stretching, the stretch and hold, because now you're not preparing your body to move. You're actually trying to settle everything down again. So from a mental state perspective, the stretch and hold is sort of like a very calming, restorative thing, but also your muscles and tendons and ligaments are warm at that point. They've been moving for a while. And so they're more receptive to the stretching, the static stretching at that point as well.
That sounds great.
Yeah. So those are the general guidelines for when you should be engaging in which type of activity.
Okay, you mentioned, jogging in place as you have before. I like the idea of that with some dynamic movement, not so much stretching, by doing jumping jacks and get your arms involved as well. And hula hoop for your hips, right?
Yeah. I mean, anything that's going to get you moving,
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't have to be like when we talk about doing a physical warm up before playing, a lot of people think like, oh, I don't have time for that. 5 minutes.
Yeah. That's
we're
all
not
you need.
talking about, we're not talking about half an hour. I mean, the longer you're going to be playing and the more intense, you probably do want to be a bit more thorough, but you really only need, 5, maybe 10 minutes to, again, do these things like jogging on the spot, the dynamic warm up, that sort of thing, dynamic stretching, and then move into your actual on instrument warm up, your practice pad, your rudiments, your, patterns to kind of get you moving that way. But yeah, it doesn't take long to do, and it can really go a long way towards helping you feel better while you play and, helping you to reduce your risk of being injured while you play.
That's awesome. And, if you're gigging, at some point you're waiting to go on anyway. So why not just jog in place while you're talking to your bandmates or the groupies or whatever?
Yeah, it doesn't have to take up a lot of space. You don't have to go for a run. You could literally jog or do jumping jacks in place. Even the stretches, the arm circle ones do take up a lot of space because it's your wingspan. You're doing this, but you can even do just shoulder circles. It's better than nothing.
Take a pogo stick or a unicycle and go around the block before a gig.
Around the backstage, around the venue.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So there's lots of things you can do that don't take up a lot of space or a lot of time, but that could be really helpful for helping you get that settled in, warm feeling right off the bat, like as soon as you sit down to play and not 3 or 4 songs in.
I'm curious how many drummers watching this could chime in, whether live or on the archive, if you do one or the other or both of yoga or Tai Chi, and if you've noticed how that helps how you feel when you play, and more importantly, after you play, if you play like 3 45-minute sets at a bar or a gig or, what, or a touring musician or something. I'm curious how, especially for drummers, the most athletic instrument, running around with a guitar doesn't count. But, well, I guess it would on the topic of this when it comes to yoga or Tai Chi and how does it help your body. I've always wanted to do both and I never have.
I've done yoga a little bit. I don't love it. I don't really know why. I just can never settle into it. I actually prefer Pilates, which is similar, very closely related.
Right?
But yeah, for whatever, and it might have just been the instructors I've had, or
Could it be that it's such a slow activity that just doesn't resonate with you? I think that's been part of my whole backness. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Although, so there's a few different types of yoga, and the one that I do like is called Yin yoga because it's essentially just like meditating in yoga poses. So it's like the slowest of the slow, and it's wonderful because you're not
Oh,
really like striving for anything at the time. You get into the position and you just like sit there and breathe for a minute, and it's really gentle. It's really quiet. It's more meditative than anything.
mm.
I've taken other yoga classes. I had one where this woman was the teacher, and she was like yelling at us,
I knew
like,
you were going to
hold
say
that
that. How
pose,
funny.
stop. And I was like, this is yoga. This isn't
It's
like
supposed to be.
spin class. Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm here to chill, not to be yelled
That is
at.
so
So
funny. That's why I get out of the
yeah,
house.
yeah. So
That's
yeah,
funny.
I don't know. I didn't love it, but I do really like Pilates. I've always feel like when I'm doing Pilates regularly, it's so core musculature focused that I always feel like my posture is just better and everything feels, good and aligned and that sort of thing. So I highly
Interesting.
recommend Pilates.
And I think another thing that could fall into this category is martial arts, because martial
Mm,
arts, you got to be limber, and that's
hmm
part of that conditioning and that sport if and activity, if you will. So again, folks, chime in if you're a drummer that does martial arts and if that's helped how you physically feel during and after you play. I did do some martial arts, but when was this? So I was living in Australia. This was 12 years ago, 11, 12 years ago, 12 years ago now, 12 to 13, depending on, the time span. And it was Qi Gong. And Qi Gong, from what I
mm.
understand, is the only offensive martial arts where all the others are defensive.
Oh,
So I
okay.
learned how to carve out an eye, which is cool. I haven't had to do it
Yikes.
yet. Yeah, haven't had to do it. I've wanted to, but I haven't had to do it yet.
Mm.
But that was an interesting experience, learning bursts of movements in a very short, and that was easy for me because as a drummer, we especially if we're set up wrong, right, and there's stuff too far away, we're used to blah 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 blah, so.
hmm
But I'm
Yeah.
curious if anybody has had an experience in martial arts and how that physically has helped you as a drummer. No one's chiming in with
Mhm.
questions yet. Give us your questions. Don't be shy. It's just us.
Just a few questions
Excuse me.
among friends.
How's your drumming coming? Are you making time? Oh no. Did I push a button?
No, no, it's my own. It's been a challenge because some of the projects that I've been working on while I'm on sabbatical were because taking up drumming again was like supposed to be part of my sabbatical
That's what
plan,
I was
and
wondering.
I know, and then the research projects that I've been working on have been taking up a lot more time than I anticipated. And so, that's been a challenge. And then, I mean, over the last few months, my oldest daughter's in high school. She plays volleyball on two different teams. And so we're just constantly driving all over the place. And so
So
it's been a
let me
bit of a
ask you this:
challenge.
Does
Yeah.
does Dory still rehearse at home?
Not often. No.
Oh,
We still have the drum set. Like
okay,
it's down in the basement.
okay.
Part of the problem is that it's down in the basement, and the basement is this like dumping ground for all the things we don't use. And so that's not why the drums are down there. But it's become this. We haven't cleaned it in a while. We're actually talking about maybe finishing it and, so have like a workout space down there. And we don't work out down there either because it's just like dusty and,
Mm.
you know, uninspiring.
Gotcha.
So,
Because I was going to say, every
yeah.
time Dory practices, go down with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really need to get better at like I have a practice pad, I have sticks, and I really need to just, pull that out while I'm watching TV and,
There you go. Yeah,
at
especially when there's a
minimum,
commercial.
yeah. do
Play
some of
along
that.
with the
So,
music to the commercial. You could always do
yeah.
that.
I had the most bizarre dream a couple weeks ago where, so local drummer Jeff Burrows, he's the drummer for the Tea Party. We've been friends for a while now. And for whatever, it's probably because the Tea Party was playing a big show in Windsor recently. But I had this dream that they had invited guest drummers to play like different songs, and I was one of them.
Oh, wow.
I don't know why.
It's a sign.
It's like, but so I get there. I don't know the song they've asked me to play. So I'm like, I'm just going to play along in 4/4 and hope for the best. And so I sit down and it's this like crazy drum set. There's like 3 different kick pedals, but no actual kick drum.
Oh.
And then I woke up. So I was like, yeah,
That's hilarious.
That's a bit of a nightmare. So,
That's
yeah.
funny. Yeah, I've had weird dreams about playing, and half the time it's my set, it's one of my drum sets, and the other half in my dream it's my drum set, but something's wonky, like the ride cymbal is way over here, and the there's one tom in front of me that's like 18 inches and just weird, far to reach, or the hi-hats are all bent, or just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's funny.
Yeah, no one chiming in with questions. Well, I know we're live because I'm watching the show right here, not the Flintstones for a change. So let's talk about this while we're waiting. And if no one chimes in, but you're just watching and learning, that's fine. That's fine. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things I learned from you is, and this is so obvious, but sometimes we're so close to our situation, or we're not all professors of kinesiology, for goodness sakes, but when you explained how if your set as drummers is set up unergonomically for you, like when my student comes over who plays on my jazz kit most of the time, I tell him, adjust it, because he's like not only is he 4 inches taller than me, but his arms are longer, his legs are longer, his torso, we're all shaped differently. Mm-hmm. And if you don't make those adjustments, and if you set up too much for show to where all this stuff way up here is just, that's how Carmine and his brother Vinny, or Vinny and his brother Carmine, hurt their shoulders and you interviewed them at one of our NAMM show coverage events about that. And it's all from setting up real cool, man, but not for your body type and the music you're playing and all of that. So what's the biggest advice you can give to get people inspired, to get their head around, maybe you guys set up your setup and it'll still be cool. Drummers have, even on a 4-piece, the largest vanity instrument as far as taking up space and being recognized over any other musician, unless you're playing a 4-piece drum kit next to Rick Wakeman's 18-piece keyboard rig.
Yeah, so I would say the biggest piece of advice is that what's definitely not cool is not being able to play because you're hurt.
Right, that's not in vogue.
that is not a good thing. And so, I think it was recently, I'm trying to think if it was Dave Elitch that said it or if he was just quoting someone else. But something to the effect of, like, a lot of people look to their heroes and set up, I love Mike Portnoy, so I'm going to set up like Mike Portnoy. Right. Or I love Neil Peart, so I'm going to set up like Neil Peart. Yeah. And or they'll say things like, well, Buddy Rich played this way and, whatever. And it's like, they aren't successful because of that weird thing. They're successful in spite of it.
Right.
And you are not that person.
Right.
And not even just from like a skill perspective, most likely.
And it doesn't mean they didn't acquire injuries either.
It doesn't. In fact, we know that Neil Peart had, some significant, had some challenges from playing, and a lot of it had to do with, the intensity. I mean, I think his setup was pretty well tuned for him. But just the constant go for that long, that takes a toll on your body. Yeah. But so, it's try it out because it might work for you, but odds are good that it might not. And so you need to, what's more important is being able to play and being able to play well and comfortably and to the best of your ability, because that's the other thing. If you're hurting, you're not playing to the best of your
Right.
ability. You're not sounding good. You're not feeling good.
It's not as fun.
It's a struggle. It's not as fun. And so,
And your risk further
all of
injury too. You're aggravating it.
risk, absolutely. So is all of that worth, but it looks so cool when I'm up here?
Yeah.
You kind of have to think about that sort of thing, and what's important here. And it's not that you can't put stuff, like if you, if there are certain elements that you only use once in a while, and you want to put something way out here because it's a big part of a big song and there's a big crash and you want to make it look good, then, if you're doing that once or twice per show, then it's probably not that big of a deal.
Right.
But you definitely don't want something that you're using, every 4 bars in every song to be all the way out here. You want that stuff in, where you can reach it more efficiently and with the least amount of effort, and toll on your body.
Yeah, and the topic of ergonomics also goes to even down to a 4 or 5 piece kit. You mentioned Buddy Rich. My small kit's a 4-piece. And I sat at it recently after my student Marty had been here for a lesson. And I sat and I was like, oh, and it was awkward because even though he's taller than me, he sat closer than what's comfortable for me. Like I felt too on top of everything. And so I actually adjusted the seat back like maybe 4 or 5 inches. So being taller, I think he just felt more comfortable being right on it, if you will. Whereas I feel more on that small kit anyways, playing to it. When I'm on my big kit, I'm more like Todd Zuckerman. I'm kind of like in it, like sitting in a fighter jet cockpit, and it's all over the place around me. I even raised my snare drum based on Todd's. I raised it a little and lowered my seat slightly based on Todd's advice, because in an interview last year, maybe the year before, I finally asked him, I said, what is with your snare drum is like right under your chin? And he laughed. It's of course not right there, but it's about right here, the top of his torso, right under his chest line. And it looks awkward. And because, get a drumstick, a mallet anyways, because he plays traditional, he explained that, if you look at his elbow and he comes down, it's exactly now parallel with the flat top of the drum head. So it just, it makes sense. Whereas if he were to lower it, now his forearm is angled down and that's uncomfortable to him. It just makes more sense and it's less range of motion, which makes sense. So I thought, I'm going to try that. And quite honestly, it took a little bit of getting used to, not a lot. I maybe played for an hour, 3 different days. And I was like, I forgot I even changed it. It just felt so natural. So now mine's not quite this high. It's about, I play match. And I know he switches sometimes, but that's just too awkward for me for it to be that high. So mine's about there. Yeah, it's about right there. Which is, I'm sitting roughly how I sit on my drum, my height of my office chair. So that, my point, folks, is that just because you have a 4-piece kit doesn't mean automatically, it's less pieces, it's not set up for show. That doesn't mean it's not ergonomically incorrect for your body type. Experiment. That's really the best way. Like Nadia said, if the stuff you use most, economize your range of motion, make it easy to get to. Don't worry about how it looks, because guess what? A, all drummers look cool, whether they're playing or not. And B, all drum sets look cool, whether they're being used or not. So you can't lose, right? It's easy.
Yeah. But that, Todd's snare drum height is a great example of, it makes perfect sense and perfect sense for him. That might not work for other people.
Right.
If you've got kids who, really admire Todd and they want to play like him, but if they're not playing traditional grip, but they still have their snare drum up here,
it's like, that's
going to be awkward and problematic. But for people who do play traditional, who maybe have their drum lower, that might be a good thing to try, raising it up a little higher. Really, really being mindful about where you have things and why they are where they are, can go a long way. Because like you say, everybody is different. So there's no you should have your snare drum at, this high off the ground and this, that, whatever. It's going to be different even though we're all built with the same parts, more or less. They are, different lengths, different shapes. You talked about your student who's taller than you, but even my husband and I are both the same height, but my legs are quite a bit longer than his, and his torso is longer than mine. So
Yeah,
we
great
would,
example.
I sit down behind his drum kit and I'm like, can I move stuff? Because we
Hey,
are,
at least
we
you
are
ask.
built differently. Yeah. Well,
That's funny.
I know how that goes. But yeah, so trying things is never a bad, idea.
Right.
Try out, well, this person sets up like this. Try it. It might be great. It might be awful.
Yeah, and it might just mean slight adjustments to heights, angles, distance. The other thing I started doing probably 11 years ago was this. I was at Philip Gelb's house. He's the owner of Phoenix Drum Company in Scottsdale, Arizona. And he had this pedal. It's called the offset pedal. And the beaters are in the middle, but the pedals are out here. And it was hard for me to get my brain around the fact that my feet are moving in one place, but the beaters are somewhere else. And so what I did was, but I understood the concept. If you sit naturally, you're not sitting with your foot lined up forward and your body and your left foot out this way. That's like so awkward after I realized, if I sit how I naturally sit in a chair. So I took my bass drum and I went, and I play with a regular pedal. I have a double pedal set up, and I rarely use that second auxiliary pedal. So my bass drum is over here. And so many drummers are so hung up on the way a set should look. And the funny thing is, when we do a multi-camera shoot, and when I do Dan's Almost Daily Vlog in the studio, just by coincidence, the main front camera happens to be at that angle, and you can't tell that my bass drum is cocked. And that's not by design. It's just the way the room is set up, where the other drum set is across the room. But if you look at me straight on, the bass drum is like this. It's not facing forward unless I dismantle my giant drum set 2 or 3 times a year for my John Bonham tributes, and I have just his setup. I admit I do move that bass drum back in front of me because I played that music that way for 45 years before I ever went like that. So it's kind of like, I want to ride that motorcycle that I've been riding for so long that I just, know how to do. So why don't I do that on my jazz kit? Is because I'm okay. How could I explain it on video without seeing the whole set? My hip isn't twisted. That's the main point. So why don't I do the John Bonham stuff on that kit? Because it doesn't have the other floor tom or the 2 timpani drums that I have, folks. So when I dismantle the big blue kit and I create my blue bonzo kit, as I call it, it's his exact setup. It's 1 up, 2 down, bass drum straight ahead, and the 2 timpani drums, boom, boom, right there, and the gong. So there you go. Which, by the way, folks, I will have a green sparkle John Bonham kit for the Drum Talk TV celebration show in Vegas. More to come about that.
Awesome.
Yeah, but just that moving the bass drum made such a difference. It feels so natural now. I admit that at first, for me to get my single flutter foot down a little bit, took just a little adjusting to, because I was just so used to how I was sitting. But all I did was, I'm sitting the same way, but now I'm like facing forward, but the drum isn't. But it's where my feet naturally fall. Try it, folks. Try it. Just try it. Don't worry about how it looks. Goodness.
Yeah, it's that is a really good observation and thing to change, because you're absolutely right that it looks a certain way having the bass drum in the front, but when it comes to how you have to contort your body to fit that, it doesn't really work.
It doesn't make sense. Like, why were people doing that, or still are, since the 20s or 30s? I don't get it.
I shouldn't say it doesn't work, because plenty of people play that way, but it might be more comfortable and less stressful on their bodies, even just from because that's the other thing with injuries, right? Like, well, it's not a problem. I don't have that problem yet.
Right.
These things take time to develop, and you may not. It may never be a problem. But just because it's not a problem right now doesn't mean that it won't be later. Yeah. And so, if you can do something that makes it easier for your body to accomplish what it is you're trying to do, then your body will thank you for it and will reward you with continuing to do it in a way that is efficient and hopefully pain and injury free for a longer period.
And I noticed a difference in how my hip felt. Like this side of my hip always used to bother me. Could never figure out why. When I changed, it went away, and I changed it. So it was 10 years ago. I was 50 before I like bought into that and tried it, and it's helped. My hip never bothers me now. Never, ever. Unless I get bumped real hard by one of the dogs and it hurts. But not from playing. So it's worth a try. Yeah.
Yeah, no, imagine if you had left it the way it was. Because did you make that change because your hip was hurting? Or was this like two kind of unrelated things that you went, oh?
Well, when Philip showed me that pedal setup and how it works, it made sense to me that, maybe this is why I'm having this issue. Because I never realized how I'm twisted. I'm facing forward, but my body's slightly, the bottom of my body's facing one way and I'm turning my hip to look forward. And I realized it after I started playing that way for a while. It just went away.
Yeah. Now imagine if you hadn't changed that.
10 more years of playing and aging.
10 more years of playing and aging.
That can add up. That's a lot.
That could have caused some pretty significant problems. Over time, it may have hindered your ability to play. You might have had to play less. Some people, it might hurt to the point where they give up and don't want to play anymore, which is really sad. So, that one small change that you didn't even necessarily, you didn't do it because of that.
Right.
But
I didn't go,
now.
Maybe I just was not that smart. Someone showed me. And we've had people on the show, Nadia, comment on this show, I'm not playing now because, and it has to do with an injury, an ankle, or the arches of their shoulders, sciatica. We've heard it all. So sometimes it's not as much the repetitive motion part, but the fact that they're set up incorrectly, add in the repetitive motion and years of playing, and now they're hurt or they need surgery. We've had people say, I need surgery on my wrist. I just got surgery on my hand. I just got surgery on, whatever. So it's an important topic because we all want you to feel good and feel good playing. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
So no one is chiming in with questions. Often, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, we answer. Well, I don't answer anything. I funnel the questions to Nadia, and she answers questions about these different afflictions. But since we don't have any questions and we've given a ton of tips and advice, we might be done.
Guess so. And we'll give it another minute in case anyone wants to jump in. But
because I see there's people watching. Don't be shy. Ask a question or tell us what's your favorite color, or who's your favorite drummer, or who is your drum set? What drummer? I can't even get it out. What drummer is your drum set up to emulate? There we go. Yeah.
And does it work for you?
Yeah.
Or did anybody
just think it does?
Set up because, I did it this way because my favorite drummer does, and then realize that doesn't work for you?
I'd love to hear that.
Or did it work?
Yeah.
Did it work and it's fine?
Or you playing through pain to make it work? Because you shouldn't have to do that. Just change it.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The height of your seat could make the difference. It might need to be higher, might need to be lower. I used to sit, so Alan White of Yes, I used to sit high like he used to, the late great Alan White of Yes. And one of the reasons I did is because I'm short, and I started playing shortly before I turned 7 years old, and I was short. And that's also why my heels have never touched the ground while playing drums, because my feet dangled and I played with the ball of my feet and my toes, and I still do. But I sat so much higher, folks. If you look at Alan White, his femurs were about at this angle to his knee. If this is his hip, this is his knee. He sat that high, and I used to. Now I sit where my femurs are almost parallel with the floor. They're probably about like that. Maybe 2 or 3 degrees ish. And it's made such a difference in the comfort of playing. And my mobility to play with my feet, especially my right foot. I'm right-footed, right-handed. I don't use my auxiliary pedal much, but I've always been a fast bass drum player, and it's been even easier with that posture. It took me, when did I change that? When I was probably 50, and I was playing since I was almost 7. So it took a long time to figure that out, 43 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what happened was one day, I think I saw a video of him playing, and I thought, that looks awkward. Why am I sitting like that? Maybe I should try something else. And I slowly started to lower my seat a bit until I was even more comfortable. Mm-hmm. So your seat can make all the difference in the world. I've never gone back. No. And if I sit at someone else's kit, that's typically the first and sometimes the only thing I adjust, especially if they're taller than me. Most people are taller than me. I used to be like 5'8", not even counting the hair I used to have. Now I'm hopefully 5'7" after I've been married a few times. We have 11 kids together, Enja and I, and 19 grandkids. Yeah, I'm shorter. One last thing. We've talked about, if you want an example of bad posture that might not work for you, but somehow worked for this other person who now has all kinds of physical ailments, look at images of Phil Collins. He played with his head straight up, but because his back was so arched, it meant his neck was like this. He was actually looking up to look straight because the way he was hunched. If you look at those pictures, it looks so awkward and painful. And I don't know if that's contributed to the spine issues he has and different things like that. But don't sit just the way someone else sits because that's how your favorite drummer does it. Don't set up, like Nadia said, just like your favorite drummer just because they do.
Yeah, you really want to set up so that when you're sitting at your drum kit, your joints are as close as you can be to within their neutral range, which for most of your joints essentially means the way they are when you're sort of just standing there quietly. Your elbows being the exception, you want them to be between like 60 and 100 degrees. Like if this is, there we go. If this is 90 degrees, you want to be like between here and here.
Right.
Everything else, if you're playing and your wrists are like this, you need to do something to get them more like this.
Makes perfect sense.
If you're playing and your shoulder, one of your shoulders is out like this for prolonged, like again, not just reaching to do a couple things, but like, often or repetitively, you want stuff to bring in so that your shoulders are closer to, their neutral position. Your snare drum, the easiest one probably to set up is to have your snare drum in front of you and your arms with your elbows at that like 90-degree mark. And your wrists should be in line with your forearms, and everything should be sort of like lined up based on that. Mm-hmm. And
Makes
then,
sense.
That way you're keeping things kind of in close. And then obviously like your crash cymbals, you don't use those. I mean, you use them a lot, but it's not like your snare drum where you're using it like literally almost the entire time.
Yeah.
So having those a little farther away is fine, but you don't want to be having to reach like all the way out like this to hit it. Right. If you can get it to it here, that's a lot easier than all the way out here, especially with that high force, high velocity movement. That puts a lot of stress on your muscles and joints and can cause problems over time.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing.
Shooting for that neutral posture.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, folks, we're going to go. We'll be back next month. I can't believe I'm saying the word March. We'll be back in March with another episode. Stay tuned. Click on the MetaFlex Therapy Glove link in the post and check those out. And also get on our email list so you can learn about all this new stuff coming up really quickly. Really quickly. All right, thanks, everybody, so much for following what we do. We will see you soon. Thanks.
Bye.